Shadowing slow version. Class 7, welcome to program. Thank you. Now the teacher has made it clear that he's extremely worried about energy prices and the effect they're gonna have on Australian consumers and the inflation. So what role can you play to make sure that people can afford their energy bills? Right now, we have to get very high international coal and gas prices, and they are flowing through our electricity market, but also our gas markets. So it's really important that consumers have adequate protections. One of the things we do as Australian energy regulator is set to defaults or standing offer prices so that there is a safety net there for consumers in terms of retail bills. But what we're doing tomorrow is releasing a strategy that actually looks at consumer vulnerability, how it is defined, the experiences that consumers can have, and different sources of vulnerability, and some really key concrete actions that we can all take to help make that consumer experience better. Now, the focus on reports is on energy equity, how to manage a system with all of these price pressures where many low income families won't be able to pay their energy bills. What we know right now is that actually 2.9% Australian residential energy consumers who already have 19-day debits, so they have bills outstanding for 90 days. The average amount of that bill is about $1,000. By the time a retailer identifies them as needing extra help, so maybe a payment plan or advice and concessions or rebates, they usually have about $1,700 worth of debt. And actually quarter of those customers have debit as $2,500. So for someone with that level of debt, does it become almost unachievable, the idea that you can get on top of it, because the amount of you have paid back would be crippling people. If you got $5 or $10 per week, that thought of paying back $2,500 worth of energy debt, it's overwhelming. So how do you change the things when we're actually looking at a situation where prices are going up, not down? So one of the things our strategy that we're released tomorrow focus on is early identification. That is critical. All the research tell us there's quite a few case studies to support this. If you identify customers early, if you believe that if you give them the right sort of support, you actually get them back in the system and paying those bills down rather than defaulting on the energy debt. That's really important thing in the face of rising prices. Now there's another concern to which is to what extent the less well off will be bearing the brunt of the massive energy transition that's taking place in Australia. What can you do to prevent that being the case? So we know 1/3 of Australians rent their homes, and that automatically means they don't have control over installation or choices about upgrading double glazing, for example, all the things you can do to reduce your energy bills. They may also less access to energy efficient equipment and appliances in their homes. So one of the things we are concerned to make sure is that through that energy transition that are adequate opportunities and supports in place. We need to protect also consumers from not from the energy transition, but to support through the transition, because low-income housing doesn't offer have solar or batteries or some of more complicated demand response technology. So what you do about, because there's clearly plenty of desire among people in returns accommodation to be part of transition, and also clearly have impacts on their bills over long term. What can you do to make that more achievable? So one of the things we have seen governments doing at the exit government's great example of this, they are putting in place measures to actually require landlords to actually upgrade the efficiency of rental properties. But one of the things our strategy is doing is actually looking at whether or not we have the framework or the sort of a fixed purpose regulatory primary for the future energy system. What does that mean in plain speaking? Can you take the ACT example and have it replicated around the country? So many governments could pick up some of those examples, and energy efficiency is really important as we transition to net zero. And what I'm talking about is actually, so for example, at the moment you're protected for your energy supply to your home, but you're not protected in the same way it's solar panel providing your energy, or if you have an actually vehicle, for example, and different meters. So looking at the essential nature of energy and how we get right protection in place is part of the work we're doing. But as I understanding is terms of work we're doing and the idea that should be equity in the approach to the way people bills are managed now. You're talking about transforming the way people deal with energy companies. The energy companies on board with this. We've got really terrific talkers from the energy companies behind this work. So, even complexity of our system is barrier and can actually compound people's experience of vulnerabilities. So, one of the things we are doing is what's called the Better Bills guideline, and so that will actually require retailers to make their bills simpler. So next year, when you receive your energy bill, you will actually be able to look down, and on the front page of it tell you, does your retailer have a better offer for you? There are lots of practical things people do conform what is going to be a very challenging time for all of us with our bills. That's right, absolutely. Thank you very much, India, for joining us. Thank you having me, Sanisa.